Have you ever caught yourself thinking, it's not worth arguing? Better to let it go, I'm above this. Yeah. We've all said that. We tell ourselves it's maturity, that we're keeping the peace, that walking away is the higher ground. But what if I told you? Every time you do that, you're not keeping the peace. You're betraying yourself. That may be hard to hear, but it's the truth. You live in a world that glorifies surface-level harmony. From the time you were a kid, you were taught that good people don't cause conflict, that being polite means being silent when something bothers you. That maturity is swallowing your truth so things don't get messy. But it's a lie, and Nietzsche, he saw that lie clearly and called it out for what it is. He understood that this kind of so-called virtue is often nothing more than fear in disguise. Fear of confrontation, fear of rejection, fear of being seen as aggressive or difficult or selfish. But the longer you live avoiding conflict, the more you turn into someone who's constantly suppressing your voice. You start thinking you're being kind, but what you're really doing is disappearing, one silence at a time. This mindset, this fear-driven way of living, is what Nietzsche called slave morality. Now, what is slave morality? It's not about being a victim of someone else. It's about the values you've adopted from a place of fear, weakness, and submission. Nietzsche said that people who lack the power to stand up, to act, to confront, often end up creating a morality that glorifies obedience, self-denial, and humility, not out of true virtue, but because they had no other option. They couldn't express their power, so they made it noble to be powerless. And the most dangerous part, this has become normal, a model of behavior, a standard we silently enforce. So ask yourself, how many times have you endured unfair treatment just to keep the peace? How often have you stayed silent when everything in you was screaming to speak up? How often have you swallowed disrespect, dismissiveness, even humiliation, just so things wouldn't escalate? This video isn't about telling you to go out and pick fights. That's not what this is about. It's about something far more powerful: reclaiming your right to exist with dignity. Because here's the reality. If you don't learn to face conflict when it matters, that avoidance will eat you from the inside. You'll carry it. You'll suppress it, until it turns into something darker: resentment, bitterness, or complete numbness. And one day you'll either explode, or you'll shut down, completely convinced that being good just means being harmless. But Nietzsche didn't believe that's where your story ends. He offered something radical, a way out, a new philosophy, a powerful reminder that conflict is not your enemy. It might be your liberation. In this video, we're going to explore Nietzsche's piercing insights on confrontation and why avoiding it is often a sign of internalized fear. We'll break down how slave morality continues to shape your behavior today, and most importantly, how you can break free from it. So if you're ready for the kind of truth that stings before it heals, stay with me till the end. Because what you hear today might just change the way you view the world and yourself forever. Let's go deeper. To truly understand why conflict scares you so much, you have to zoom out. Way out. Beyond your own life. Beyond your past. Beyond your childhood conditioning. We have to look at how morality itself was formed. And that's where Nietzsche's On the Genealogy of Morals comes in. In it, Nietzsche explains something brutally honest. The values we praise today, the things we call good, didn't start from strength or nobility. They were born from resentment, from weakness, from people who couldn't fight back, so they flipped the script. Picture a world where power ruled, where strength, assertiveness, courage were all admired. In that world, those with strength didn't apologize for it. They didn't pretend to be weak to fit in. They lived openly. They took up space. They acted. They created. That was what Nietzsche called master morality, a morality that comes from living fully affirming life, embracing struggle, taking risks. But not everyone had that power. There were also those who couldn't stand up, who couldn't act, who couldn't win. And rather than admit they were powerless, they did something else. They redefined what it meant to be good. They said, "You know what? Power isn't good. Strength isn't good. Taking up space isn't good. That's bad. That's evil. And in contrast, you know what's good: submission, obedience, staying quiet, not fighting back." See what happened? The moral table flipped. But not because of truth, because of necessity. The people who couldn't dominate learned to survive by pretending that their survival strategy was actually the virtuous path. Nietzsche calls this slave morality. It's not a morality that celebrates life. It's one that denies it. It lifts up retreat as wisdom, passivity as virtue, suppression as strength. And the wildest part, it worked. It spread. It shaped religions, societies, families, schools, and now it shapes you. It's in the messages you've heard since you were a child. Don't talk back. Don't make a scene. Be a good boy. Be a polite girl. Don't argue. Let it go. Sound familiar? These were early blueprints of slave morality. And every time you swallowed your truth to stay good, those blueprints etched deeper. But here's the thing, and it's important. This doesn't mean you are weak or submissive by nature. It means you were trained to believe that being assertive was wrong, that having boundaries was selfish, that saying no was rude, that anger was dangerous, that conflict meant failure. And now, as an adult, those old beliefs are still running your life. The result, a psychological trap. You think you're being peaceful by avoiding conflict, but what's really driving you is fear. Fear of rejection, fear of not being liked, fear of being alone. And every time you retreat, that slave morality digs in deeper. It wins again. But it doesn't stop there. There's something else that starts to grow in the shadows of that avoidance: resentment. And that's exactly where we're heading next. Because this part of Nietzsche's philosophy, it cuts deep. He shows us that behind every person who constantly avoids conflict, behind every nice mask, there's often a storm of suppressed rage. Resentment is the slow poison. It's the buildup of all those swallowed no's, all those fake smiles, all those nights replaying what you should have said. In the next section, we're going to expose resentment for what it really is and how it's silently destroying your inner peace. So if you're with me this far, don't stop now. The next part is the one people avoid the most, and that's exactly why it matters. And hey, if this content hits home for you, if you're starting to see yourself in these words, take a moment and subscribe to the channel. Your support helps bring these deeper conversations to life. And it tells the algorithm, hey, this matters. Also, leave a comment. What's one situation where you chose silence but later realized it cost you something important? And let's talk about it. because bringing it to light is the first step in breaking the pattern. Now that you understand how Nietzsche exposed the roots of slave morality and how it shaped your fear of confrontation, it's time we talk about the emotion hiding in plain sight, eating away at you from within. Resentment. This is where it gets personal. Because resentment isn't just some abstract concept. It's what you carry every time you hold your tongue, every time you shrink yourself, every time you nod along while burning inside. Nietzsche was relentless in uncovering this. In On the Genealogy of Morals, he describes resentment not as weakness, but as misdirected energy. It's the power of action trapped. It's the will to fight, to speak, to push back turned inward, because you were too afraid to let it out. Think about it. Every time you wanted to say something but didn't. Every time you swallowed that comeback, that truth, that no. You didn't eliminate the energy, you just buried it. And what's buried doesn't disappear. It ferments. It starts to sour, to poison. And the longer you carry it, the more it rots from the inside. Nietzsche describes resentment as the moral narrative of the powerless. In other words, when someone can't or won't confront what bothers them, they create a story to make themselves feel superior for staying silent. You know the story. You've told it before. I'm the bigger person. I won't lower myself to their level. Forgiveness is strength. I choose peace. But if we're honest, that story often isn't peace. It's avoidance dressed up as virtue. It's fear wearing the mask of maturity. Nietzsche calls this out behind that I forgive, because I'm noble mindset often lies something unresolved, a frustration that couldn't find a voice. And that frustration left unchecked becomes resentment. So how do you know if resentment is living inside you? Let me ask you, have you ever walked away from a conversation, your body buzzing with adrenaline going over all the things you should have said? Do you smile to someone's face but secretly feel bitterness every time they cross your boundaries? Do you pride yourself on being calm and composed, while quietly seething inside because people keep taking advantage of you? That's not peace. That's suppressed power. And Nietzsche warns us the resentful person is not merely a victim, they are an accomplice to their own imprisonment. Yes, you heard that right. You're not just being hurt, you're participating in your own silencing by refusing to confront. And the longer you let it continue, the deeper the resentment grows. And here's where it becomes dangerous. Resentment creates a loop. The more you avoid confrontation, the more resentment you accumulate. The more resentment you carry, the less strength you have to confront. And slowly, you become a prisoner in your own life. A person afraid to speak. A person afraid to claim space. A person afraid to be. And yet you start convincing yourself that this is who you are. You start building an identity around it. You become the good one, the peacemaker, the selfless person. But that's not who you are. That's a defense, a survival role. And Nietzsche calls this out with a cold clarity. Many people prefer to stay in this role because it gives them the illusion of moral superiority. I'm the one who always gives. I'm the one who never causes problems. I'm better because I never need to confront anyone. But deep down, they're angry, tired, invisible. And worse, they don't even know who they are without that identity. But Nietzsche doesn't leave us there. He doesn't say this to shame you. He says it because he believed in something more powerful than guilt or resentment. He believed in transformation, and at the heart of that transformation is what he called the will to power. Now let's be clear, this phrase has been misunderstood 1,000 different ways. Some people hear will to power and think Nietzsche was talking about domination, being a tyrant controlling others. But no, when Nietzsche spoke of the will to power, he meant something far deeper. He meant the core life energy inside all of us. The force that wants to live, create, expand, overcome, grow. It's the energy that pushes the seed to crack the soil, that drives a child to learn, that moves you to create art, speak up, build something, challenge something. That's the will to power. It's not about power over others. It's about power within yourself. But here's the problem. Slave morality teaches you to fear that power, to associate it with arrogance, with violence, with shame. So what happens? You suppress it. You downplay your needs. You call your desires selfish. You flinch at your own anger. You mute your voice before it even forms a sentence. And where does all that unused power go? It turns into resentment, into helplessness, into quiet despair. The will to power doesn't die, it gets twisted. That's why people who avoid conflict often feel stuck, drained, exhausted. They're not weak, they're powerful people living in self-denial. But Nietzsche tells us you can get that power back. And it starts with a shift from passivity to presence, from avoiding to confronting, from fear to ownership. You don't need to bulldoze everyone in your path. You don't need to scream or explode or become someone you're not. You just need to stop running from your own strength. Because here's what Nietzsche believed: life is struggle. Not in the hopeless, depressing way, but in the vital way. Conflict isn't something to avoid. It's a necessary part of becoming who you are. It's where your voice sharpens. It's where your truth gets tested. It's where your power wakes up. Avoiding conflict to keep things peaceful is like staying asleep to avoid bad dreams. You don't grow. You don't change. You don't live. So how do you begin reclaiming that will to power? Start small. Say no when you mean no. Draw a boundary even if your voice shakes. Speak up when something doesn't sit right. Every small act of truth-telling reactivates your power. Every confrontation done with presence, not rage, rebuilds your backbone. And over time, that power won't feel dangerous anymore. It'll feel natural. Because it is. But Nietzsche knew that transformation takes more than a few boundary-setting moments. He believed in deep soul-level change. And to explain that change, he gave us one of the most beautiful metaphors in all of philosophy: the 3 metamorphoses of the spirit. From the camel to the lion to the child. Each represents a stage in the journey of self-liberation. And in the next part, we're going to walk through that journey together. We'll talk about how to stop being the camel, the one who carries everything without protest. How to awaken the lion, the one who says no and reclaims inner space. And finally, how to become the child, the one who lives freely, creates their own values, and exists in joy. If what you're hearing right now resonates, I want to hear from you. Comment below. What's one thing you've been silently resenting? What's something you haven't said, but now realize you need to? Name it. Claim it. Writing it down is an act of reclaiming power. And if you haven't yet, make sure to subscribe to the channel. Because part 3 is the one that ties it all together, and it's going to give you the emotional roadmap to truly become who you are. See you there. So far, we've talked about the roots of your fear of confrontation. We've exposed the poison of resentment. And we've begun to touch the edge of something deeper, the part of you that wants to reclaim its voice, its space, its power. Nietzsche didn't just describe your pain, he laid out the path to transformation. Not in abstract terms, but in a powerful metaphor, the three metamorphoses of the spirit: the camel, the lion, and the child. This isn't just philosophy, it's a roadmap for your liberation. Let's start with the camel. The camel represents the part of you that carries burdens. It's obedient. It endures. It bows to duty. It says yes even when it's tired. It stays quiet to keep the peace. It accepts the weight of others' expectations, family pressure, societal norms. You might be living as the camel right now. You've learned to equate strength with silent suffering. You think you're good because you don't complain, because you can handle it. But Nietzsche warns us the camel's strength is not creative, it's resigned. It survives, but it doesn't live. And to make matters worse, the camel starts to take pride in this suffering. The more it submits, the more virtuous it believes itself to be. But deep down, it's burning out. You cannot carry the weight of the world forever. At some point, something inside the camel snaps. It breaks under the pressure of all the lies it's had to swallow, all the truths it's buried. And that's when the spirit begins its next transformation into the lion. The lion doesn't carry burdens. The lion confronts. It awakens its will to power. It reclaims its space. It learns to say no. No to being silent. No to being reduced. No to inherited morality. But this lion doesn't exist to destroy others. It exists to claim an inner kingdom. A place within the self where truth can breathe again. To get there, the lion must fight the greatest enemy, the dragon of thou shalt. This dragon represents all the moral commandments written on your soul by others. Be nice, be quiet, be humble, don't make waves. Every scale on the dragon's body is a rule you've internalized without question. And to slay it, you need courage. Because standing up to this dragon will mean facing judgment, criticism, discomfort. People might say you've changed. They might call you selfish. They might withdraw. But that's the test. You will have to walk through that fire to find freedom. And once the dragon falls, once the lion reclaims its right to exist, something incredible happens. The final metamorphosis begins. The child is born. The child doesn't fight, it creates. It no longer reacts to the world. It shapes it. It lives with joy, with freedom, with curiosity. It chooses its own values. It speaks its truth without the weight of shame or fear. The child doesn't ask for permission. The child doesn't carry the past. It plays. It invents. It dances in the space the lion made possible. This is the stage where life becomes art, where you are no longer defined by wounds or rules or resentment, but by your own chosen meaning. But let's be clear, you don't reach the child without passing through the lion. And you don't awaken the lion without first recognizing you're still the camel. You can't skip the journey. You have to feel the weight. You have to reach the point where silence is no longer noble but suffocating. Only then do you find the strength to roar. But even that isn't the end. Because now comes the biggest question of all, the one Nietzsche believed was the ultimate challenge. Can you become who you are? In his work, Ecce Homo, Nietzsche doesn't just pose this as a reflection. He gives it as a call to arms: become who you are. It sounds simple, almost poetic, but it's anything but easy. Because becoming who you are means tearing down everything you became for someone else. Every role you played to be loved. Every silence you kept to avoid conflict. Every lie you told yourself to keep the peace. So ask yourself, how much of your life is truly yours? How many choices have you made based on what others wanted or expected? How many paths have you walked just to make someone else happy? Nietzsche reminds us most people never become themselves. They live their entire lives playing characters, wearing masks, adjusting and adapting, pretending to be someone acceptable. And with every compromise, their identity fades. The cost is enormous. Each time you betray your inner voice, a part of you goes numb. Each time you avoid a necessary fight, your clarity weakens. Each time you say yes when you meant no, your integrity fractures. Until one day, you look in the mirror and barely recognize who's staring back. Nietzsche saw that this isn't just a personal issue, it's existential. Conflict isn't just something to manage, it's the very arena where identity is forged. In conflict, you discover what you truly value, what you truly believe, what you're truly willing to defend. Without conflict, there's no clarity. Without clarity, there's no authenticity. And without authenticity, there is no real life, only performance. So if you want to become who you are, you have to face the fear. You have to stand up and say no more. No more saying yes to things that drain you. No more shrinking to keep people comfortable. No more lying to yourself in the name of peace. But that requires a terrifying kind of honesty. Because when you stop living by the rules of others, there's no blueprint left. You're on your own. No applause. No guarantees. Just the quiet space where your own truth begins to take shape. And yeah, it's scary. You might lose people. You might be misunderstood. You might disappoint those who benefited from your silence. But what you gain is worth infinitely more. You gain yourself, your freedom, your aliveness. Every confrontation you face with presence, every time you speak the truth, instead of swallowing it, every time you claim your space instead of yielding, it's a step toward who you really are. Nietzsche never promised comfort, but he promised something greater: to live with clarity, with purpose, with power, to become someone who no longer needs to hide because there's nothing left to protect, only something to build. But here's where we end with the final uncomfortable truth. Your silence isn't just personal, it has a cost. Every time you stay quiet in the face of disrespect, you're not just protecting peace, you're allowing injustice to breathe. You're teaching others that it's okay to mistreat you, that you're willing to carry the burden, that you'll stay quiet again, and the world listens. People can sense when you're afraid to assert yourself, and those who act in bad faith, they take full advantage. That silence you believe is saving you, it's exposing you. Every unspoken boundary invites violation. Every unexpressed truth makes room for falsehood. Every time you say nothing, you are not being neutral. You are feeding the very patterns that oppress you. Nietzsche saw this clearly. A morality based on fear does not lead to peace. It leads to spiritual decay. An authentic life demands courage, not fearlessness. Courage, the willingness to act even with fear. So the next time you're tempted to stay quiet, to let it slide, to shrink back and say, "It's not worth it," Ask yourself, am I really being wise or am I being afraid? That one question asked honestly can change everything. Because becoming who you are does not happen in comfort. It happens in confrontation. It happens when you choose to step into the fire instead of hiding from it. It happens when you stop apologizing for existing. You were never meant to be a camel forever. You have within you the lion, and beyond the lion, the child. You have within you the strength to say no, and the creativity to build a life that's truly yours. But none of it happens without action, and it starts now. If this video spoke to you, if any part of it stirred something inside, you say it out loud. Type it in the comments right now. I choose to no longer remain silent. Write it. Own it. Give that inner voice the dignity of a name. And don't stop here. This video is just one part of a much larger journey. The next video on the channel will help you keep building the foundation you've started today. It will give you new tools, new language, and new clarity for living a life that's fully, completely yours. So click over to that next one and I'll see you there. You are not here to please. You are here to become. Let's go.